And happy Thursday. Welcome to another dose of your weekly higher wisdom.
I am Kumar.
I am Dr. Shelley, and today we are discussing DNA activations and superhuman abilities.
We have those.
We have those. They've just been dormant and asleep. So once we get started here on Instagram,
We are.
perfect. We will begin. So scientists say we have a lot of junk DNA. 98%.
Yeah, 98% of our DNA is supposed
to be
junk DNA.
Why would it be junk DNA? My question is, why would we be born with all of our DNA if 98% of it is junk?
Well, what's interesting about that information is that the only reason they call it junk DNA is because they know it's written in a language. They don't know the language that it's written in. So therefore, because they can't understand the language it's written in, they consider it junk DNA.
Well, and a lot of the stats and what we're going to share today comes from Portal 4, Spiral 9, Meet Your DNA from Somatophobia. Because exactly as you said, the junk DNA, they can't read it. As I like to call our DNA, it's our multidimensional recipe book. And it is exactly that. It is our recipe book.
It is also our library.
It's a liquid cosmic living library.
Because one MIT just did a test a couple of years ago, and they managed to hack a single DNA strand. And one single DNA strand contains 70 petabytes of data storage.
700 terabytes.
700 terabytes of data storage. Now, let's put that in perspective. 700 petabytes.
In 1 gram of DNA.
Is enough DNA. There's enough data in that space to take every book that has ever been written by humanity that we still have, all the knowledge, and line it up, and it will wrap around the moon and around the earth 350 million times in that one single gram of DNA.
Well, and we have 37 trillion cells. Now multiply that. And I have some very interesting stats here that I'll share from Somatophobia just to give you all a glimpse into just how magnificent your DNA is. And if you're like, first, what is DNA? I'll share with you that in this chapter, the very first opening statement is that this journey that we are currently on, the timeline split, the ascension journey, the rebirthing of Mother Earth, what we are experiencing right now on the planet with this collective and planetary awakening is literally activating our dormant DNA. DNA that has been asleep because we quote unquote haven't needed it to function within this 3D reality that we've been functioning in. But this human body that we were born with has the capacity to have all of our DNA turned online and be activated. It's just that DNA has been dormant. It's been asleep. Well, so we have been asleep.
Well, it's not what we have because we use less than, let's be honest, everything that we experience the world in is based on our senses, on our limited senses, our eyes, our nose, our ears, our touch, our smell, of which we are used less than 5%. We only see less than 5% of visible light spectrum. We only hear less than 5%. That's why dogs and cats have so much better hearing than us. We only hear less than 5%. Our brain, we're using less than 5%. So DNA, we're using less than 3%.
Absolutely. And what's funny is in the spiritual community, there's a lot of spiritual bypassing and the spiritual ego that says, I'm one of the 144,000 souls who's going to ascend.
Hold that thought for 1 second. We forget to give our disclaimer.
Trigger disclaimer. Folks, well, anybody watching, you should know we come with a trigger
we
disclaimer.
Always do it. We always do it. So everything we express to you is based on our opinion and our experiences. We're not saying that it has to be yours. We're not saying that it's right or it's wrong. We're just stating what we have observed.
And what we
So
have remembered through our healing journey, a lot of what I have shared in somatophobia, I remembered and then used our current modern day science, which is really limited, to back up what we have remembered on our healing journey. So going back to the 144,000, this whole spiritual ego joke is really funny because when you activate your 12 strand DNA, you start realizing that that 144,000 is referring to your DNA that comes fully online and activated. And that is what it means to be a chosen one. But who chooses you?
you have to choose you.
You have to choose you.
But you're not choosing you from a trauma self. You're not just going to say, I'm a chosen one because, and like we said, from what we observed on social media, on YouTube, and everybody wants to be a chosen one. Chosen to do what? Chosen to heal or chosen to bypass?
Heal, because in choosing to heal, your healing becomes your sacred life purpose. And I ask this question all the time. What is our sole purpose? Why are we here?
I know why I'm here.
To wake up, to go to a job that we hate, to live off of credit, to pay for things that we don't need. We just watched that documentary on Netflix the other evening about consumerism and how much products, shoes, clothes, t-shirts, are being produced per minute.
All around the world.
The numbers were mind-boggling.
And then dumped in the ocean or dumped into landfills. It's just because we live in a consumer-based society.
Because we're addicted to seeking something external to fulfill this void that we have within us, this feeling of lack, not enoughness, emptiness, lack of happiness, lack of gratitude. Well, retail therapy, if I go out and buy shit, I'm going to be happy for that brief little moment.
It was actually shocking to watch that documentary to see how people would, and I suppose when we lived in the US, we were probably guilty of that every month, every at least once or twice a week, the UPS guy would show up with our Amazon or Groupon deliveries, but we didn't purchase in the numbers that we saw. We were still part of the problem before we made our life simpler.
Well, and this is the thing. We all have to remember and realize we are part of the problem. As Nako has a song, Part of the Problem, he sings about it. We all have contributed to this reality that we are experiencing collectively. And if we don't like what we see in our reality, we can change it by changing ourselves. And it begins with our DNA. So coming back to the 144,000, I want to share this so you can get the higher perspective of, oh, that's what this 144,000 means, because I've even seen this concept infiltrate and filter over into religion, specifically the false Abrahamic religions that they will use and go, well, I'm the chosen one. God chose me.
We have an entire culture that says that they are the chosen people of God.
But are you choosing you to heal you? Or are you just telling yourself that you're chosen by this external God or being or whomever? Because truly choosing you means choosing to step onto this healing path where you become an active participant in activating your DNA. You're not just dependent on one of the things we talk about that awakens and activates your DNA are the solar flares that we are currently experiencing in this solar cycle. And they're definitely activating our DNA, but it's not all sunshine, rainbows, and unicorns like a lot of people paint DNA activations to be.
Well, again, if you spend any time on social media, you'll see if somebody posts something about that, it's amazing how many people jump in. Oh, I feel upgrades. I feel upgrades. We can tell you what our upgrades feel like, and they're not pleasant.
Exactly.
But we have to work on our body to allow that energy to enter. We just don't sit around and go, oh yeah, I'm being upgraded.
So if we come back to the 144,000 strands of DNA, let's look at this because your body, and you've probably heard of the 7 different chakras. In each chakra, there is a color that vibrates at the frequency of that dimension, and there is a lotus flower that represents the number of petals associated with that chakra. So if we go through all 7 of your chakras and we do the math, we have the root chakra with 4 petals. Are you going to be my mathematician?
Yep.
We have the sacral chakra with 6 petals. We have the solar plexus chakra with 10 petals. We have the heart chakra with 12. We have the throat chakra with 16. And these 5 chakras equal 48. So now the third eye chakra only has 2 petals, meaning it is twice as powerful as the lower 5 chakras. So 48 times 2, 96. And then the crown chakra is 1,000 times more powerful than the lower 6 chakras. So if we were to take 48 plus 96,
144.
We get 144. And then you multiply that by 1,000.
You get 144,000.
144,000. And that is where this concept of 144,000 souls are going to ascend, or they are the chosen ones. No, it's 144,000 strands of DNA. And when we activate all of them, just like each chakra has a color for the frequency of that higher dimension, that is how we access these higher dimensions of consciousness, of our higher self. Ready for some more math?
Absolutely.
So coming back to the 700 terabytes of DNA and 1 gram of DNA can store 700 terabytes of information. So when you multiply that by 37 trillion cells, let's go down this rabbit hole of how many feet of DNA or how many miles of DNA you have living in your body. So let's start out with a single cell. There is 6.5 feet of DNA within one single cell. So then multiply that by 37 trillion cells, and that gives us, 1,000 million billion, 240,000 trillion, 500 billion feet of DNA. That's a lot of zeros. How many is that? 1, 2, 3, 6, 9, 10, 11. 11 zeros.
How much of that is in miles?
Miles? Well, we got 1,000 million billion. 45 billion miles, 549,242,424 miles.
That's how much DNA we have in our bodies.
That's a lot of DNA. So now let's put this in perspective. The average distance between the Earth and the Moon is 238,855 miles. Your DNA could stretch to the Moon and back 95,349 times.
That's within a human DNA.
All of our human DNA. So my DNA can stretch to the Earth,
through the Moon,
and back. How many times? 90. Wow. Or between the Earth and the Sun, 93 million miles. So your DNA can stretch to the Sun and back 244 times. So if we look at this, wow, the diameter of the solar system, let's go a little deeper. The diameter of the solar system, based on the heliopause, which is the region of our solar system where the solar wind, radiation, emitted from the sun is overtaken by the radiation of interstellar space, is approximately 11 billion miles. Your DNA could travel from where you are at, from the sun to the edge of the solar system, back to the sun, back to you, twice. To the sun, to the edge of the solar system, back to you twice. That's a lot of DNA, because from the sun to the edge of the solar system is 11 billion miles. And we are 93 million miles from the sun. So just contemplate those numbers, which your mind may be struggling to even grasp because they're so monstrous. Like, how many times can our DNA, something that is invisible, that we cannot see,
that carries so much
information? So if our DNA can travel from us to the sun, to the edge of the solar system and back twice, and we can't see it, it's invisible. That literally means we have the cosmos stored within us if our DNA can extend all the way out to the edge of the cosmos and back. And that is what we always talk about. Everything you're looking for is inside of you. And it truly is within your DNA, which I like to call a multidimensional recipe book, because it is exactly that. It is a recipe book. So, what do these DNA activations and upgrades feel like, my love?
Well, that depends. We first have to understand, and again, we have done a video on the solar flare, so we're not going to rehash the solar flares. Feel free to go back and look at that video where we discussed the solar flares. But the only piece we're going to repeat is the fact that we are, every time we have a CME, a coronal mass injection, which we are having a lot going on, especially over the next 2 years, or a solar flare, that is an M class or an X class solar flare, we are getting a massive amount of high frequency energy that's coming into our bodies. Now, our bodies are not prepared to handle it, so it has to go through a filtration system before it enters us. But this is why a lot of people you're hearing are feeling they're very short, they're feeling very emotional, they're feeling exhausted, they feel for some reason or the other, there's trauma showing up because everything is being magnified by these solar flares.
Absolutely.
Low vibration and high vibration. So if you're sitting around waiting for the DNA to be upgraded, depending on what frequency you're in, that is going to be what's going to get magnified.
Well, and let me just preface this. We're not saying that you are not receiving DNA upgrades if you're not doing any healing work. There is a lot that is occurring behind the scenes that you cannot feel, that you're not aware of. Your current sickness or flu or whatever it is that you're quote unquote experiencing is more often than not DNA upgrades and activations. But because you can't see your DNA, and because for the longest while, scientists have termed 98% of your DNA as just junk, so don't pay attention to it, that is actually where, and epigenetics has proven this, every single unhealed trauma of your ancestors is stored in your DNA. I mean, just look at the poor healing that I experienced in my sacred secretion rebirth last night. 2 grandparents are German, and there was so much healing that I had to do around my German lineage that even though I didn't grow up deeply connected to my German lineage, even though I didn't grow up in Germany, there were so many deep ancestral memories from Hitler. And it was a deep ceremony, but that is how through these sacred ceremonies, that is how I connect to my DNA and what is stored in my DNA. And it's through this healing journey that when you begin healing those traumas in your body, you actually start connecting with your DNA and healing for your ancestors.
And epigenetics tells us that we are all of our unhealed traumas that our ancestors couldn't heal gets passed down to us
until someone comes along and says, hey, are you ready to heal this?
And if we don't heal them, we just pass it on to the next generation who puts their own stuff into that basket and pass it on to the next generation.
And one of the reasons that scientists call 98% of our DNA as junk is it always comes back to somatophobia, fear of the body, fear of the feminine realm of consciousness, because the feminine realm, if we look at the yin yang, the white portion of the yin and yang is the masculine. The black portion of the yin and yang is the feminine. So the feminine realm has been deemed as scary because it's dark, it's black, it's the void space. But if we look at where we came from, we came out of our mother's womb, which was dark. Our higher self was birthed out of the divine mother's womb, which is dark.
When we access our consciousness, because a lot of yogis will tell you this, that between the hours of 10 p.m. and 3 a.m. in the morning is the best time to do a meditation practice because it's dark.
It's dark.
And our melatonin, our pineal gland is producing vast amount of melatonin in the darkness.
And why are ayahuasca ceremonies, peyote, yahe served at night? They're served at night in the dark. So you can go into your darkness. We have to, during this time of awakening, we have to conquer our fear of the darkness because it's just programming and belief systems that we have given our power to. that trickles all the way down to something as simple as removing a floor on an elevator panel, removing the 13th floor due to fear of the feminine, because the number 13 is associated with the divine feminine. And because the feminine realm is scary and dark, something bad is going to happen if they include the 13th floor on that elevator panel. So they'll skip it. They'll go from floor 12 to 14.
I've traveled enough hotels. I've seen it.
Something as silly as that, all due to somatophobia, fear of the body. So what's interesting is I wrote about in my book about this junk DNA and how, let me just fast forward here and find it.
So as we get these DNA upgrades, all of this is being offered into our fascia. So one of the reasons that we're always encouraging people that you have to work on the body, it's a self-mastery journey that you're going. You're mastering the mind, the masculine, and the body, the feminine. So you're making it stronger. You're opening up everywhere that trauma, because all trauma is stored in the body. That's what we wrote about in the book. Somatophobia, fear of the body. Shelley is not the first doctor to write about this. There are several wonderful books that have been written about this. All trauma is stored in the body. It is experienced in the mind, but it is felt and stored in the body. So if we're not addressing the body, if you're doing plant medicine thinking that you're healing, we just had this discussion last night, our brain is actually 4 brains, but most of the time we refer to our brain as 3 brains, because the 4th brain is actually the solar plexus.
The gut.
So 99.9% of us, unless we are a yogi or a spiritual monk, we live off our reptilian brain,
fight, flight, freeze state.
And how do we know that we're living no matter how much meditation that you think that you're doing or whatever you think you're doing, you're living off your reptilian brain. An average person in a relaxed state breathes between 15 to 19 times a minute, of which you're not conscious of even one breath. We're thinking between 60 to 70 thoughts every day, 2,900 thoughts a minute. So that is absolute chaos. So it's fight, flight, freeze, fight, flight, freeze. So we're in that reptilian brain all the time.
Hence, we are not awake. We are not online, which is why we have 98% junk DNA, because how can our DNA activate and come online when we're not awake? Our body's capacities are not turned online and awake. So what I was looking for here, according to scientists, how they refer to your 98% of DNA as junk DNA, they have actually coined it dark matter or dark genome, which again, they call it remnants of broken genes that have ceased to be relevant. You don't need those because they're no longer relevant. Well,
so you're telling me that I'm carrying around 97% of my DNA is non-relevant?
Non-relevant. So you don't need that.
I only 3% is all I need?
So DNA is like I call it, it's a recipe book. It's an instruction set. Your skin cells have their own recipe book. Your liver has its own recipe book. Every single cell has a copy of every other recipe book. So there's like a grand master copy in every cell. But the main portion of the DNA that's activated in your skin cells is the skin recipe book. Your skin doesn't need the instruction set for your liver or for your stomach or for your whatever other organ of your body. So, but every cell has the capacity to have every single recipe book turned on and online because it's there.
And it has the capacity to replicate itself. Hence why you as a human being are completely rebuilt in less than a year. You get a new liver every 6 weeks. You get a new spleen, a new lung.
Blood cells every 120 days.
You are literally, every cell in your body is replaced down to your bones. Every cell in your skeletal structure is replaced. So it's replicating itself, which is why it's the recipe book. It has the recipe of how to regenerate
and rejuvenate. But what are we rejuvenating ourselves from if we are staying stuck in that reptilian brain, fight, flight, freeze state?
So you think about it. I mean, you're a pain doctor, so you saw it all the time. How can the human body be replicating itself with new cells, but the old pain is still there? You saw it in all your clients all the time. How is
Well,
it
I
that,
saw it in myself. How can I regenerate my own body
and
when
then
the
bring it back
same
broken?
not enough wound is still present? How can you regenerate your body with all the anger and frustration that you didn't heal? Like, we have all these suppressed emotions that we have not healed that are stuck in our body. So every month that we are sacred secretion, we are not rebirthing ourselves. Guess what? All my shame and guilt that I haven't healed, not just for me, but all of my ancestors. If I don't rebirth myself and tap into my body's superhuman ability to rejuvenate itself, because it has that capacity, every single month, I'm going to send that shame and guilt right back into my blood, right back into my molecules that flow through my body. It's going to be recirculated through my lymphatic system instead of being expelled. So I'm circulating the same shit.
So you're saying that although I'm reinventing my new cell, my old trauma stays.
It stays imprinted in it. So we are literally missing out on this superhuman capacity to rejuvenate ourselves without trauma, without guilt and shame, without anger and frustration, without regret and sadness, without all these belief systems and programs that keep us stuck and small and limited.
So
But we just keep recirculating the same shit.
I'm superhuman?
Yeah, we all are.
I'm in. I'm gonna jump
We
off the
just
building.
didn't receive our superhuman sacred rite of passage. And that, again, you'll hear us say this over and over. With no rites of passages, this is why we are where we are today, stuck. And I'll come back to that same question. And I know that's where when we hit our rock bottom, we're like, is this really all there is to life? We feel like we're in Groundhog Day. Get up, go to work, do the same thing over and over. Were we really happy? We were happy to an extent, but I knew there was more. I knew that my body had capacities that I wanted to turn online. And I remember having that thought. You mentioned this yesterday in our practice. I remembered having that thought before I started competing in fitness and figure competitions. I wanted to explore the limitations of my body and see what was possible. Little did I know, it was really anchoring in all of my self-judgment and body image issues and all those wounds I inherited from my mother.
Who inherited it
But
from her mother, who inherited it from her mother.
Competing led me on my journey to where I am at today. So I'm forever grateful for it. But the same as you wanted to explore, you just shared it in a sacred conversation last night. You've always been someone to push your boundaries. You want to explore your limitations, and you don't take the easy path,
No.
even in board games.
No. Ever since I was a kid, I could play checkers and see an easy move that I could easily win the game, and I will just totally ignore it because I wanted to expand my mind to see, okay, if I don't take the easy route, where else can I figure out anything?
Well, and how do we activate our DNA and move out of our reptilian brain into the midbrain?
Well, according to neuroscience, the only way to grow the midbrain is to be able to do things that are not comfortable. So for us, our daily practice is things that we are not comfortable. We push our bodies into places that is painful, that is stuck, that we can't move into, not from a place of hurting it, but pushing the pain limit to experience it, holding the breath as long as we can to feel that uncomfortableness, because we know, again, neuroscience proves what it is that we do already know, that is growing our midbrain.
Well, and anything uncomfortable grows the midbrain. So even if
A diet.
anything that you do, anything that you commit to, a new pattern, a new behavior,
Jogging a mile every day,
learning
it
a
doesn't
new
matter what it is.
language. If you're right-handed, I used to encourage my patients to do this all the time. If you're right-handed, you use your mouse with your right hand, you brush your teeth with your right hand, you write with your right hand. Start using your left hand. Do something uncomfortable, because that's going to start strengthening and creating new neural networks. Because that is the other thing that contributes to activating all of this dormant DNA that we haven't used. We have to do things that are uncomfortable. The DNA has been dormant. How do we think it's going to wake up? Unless through uncomfortableness. Because if it stays asleep, we stay in our comfort zone.
You and I both competed, and we know, how did we get to be able to step on a stage and place in the top 5 in whatever competition we were doing because we made ourselves uncomfortable. We were going into the gym, doing the things that we didn't want to do, pushing our bodies to where it didn't want to go, eating the foods that we didn't really enjoy, just to be able to get to that level of maximum capability in our bodies.
And we carried that same level of, I remember back in my competing days, I had to make a lot of sacrifices and my schedule was so super tight that the discipline, the commitment, the preparation. I mean, I would cook all of my meals on Sunday to be able to wake up at 4 a.m, to be at the Palmer's gym by 5, to do my morning hour of cardio, sometimes train a client before coming home and showering, before getting to class at 8 a.m., staying in class till 4 or class and half clinic, and then going to the gym at 4 or 5, training myself for competition, training a few more clients until 8 o'clock at night, going home, finishing up with my last dinner, doing my homework for classes or whatever I needed to do, and then going to bed by 9. I mean, my day was on repeat like that. But the sacrifices and the dedication and the commitment was worth it because I placed in the top 5 in all 7 competitions. So it showed me what was possible and what I needed and was preparing for now.
Which is exactly what we're doing now. We're
on
still
this journey.
We are semi-retired and we still wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and we're still in our meditation room and we're still meditating for 2 to 3 hours in the morning and another 2 to 3 hours in the afternoon. Again, it's the same discipline that we used when we competed. That's why I keep reminding you, for a lot of people who are following this path, it's extremely difficult for them. For us, we've always disciplined ourselves to do the things that are uncomfortable.
Well, and if you've never been, it's the great analogy. If you've never been someone who loves the gym, I grew up loving the gym, started working out at 13. So going to the gym, doing something that gets my body moving has always been a hobby of mine. I feel lazy. I feel blah if I'm not doing something with my body. Because why do we have a body?
See, I grew up as a sugarcane farmer, so that was my gym. Swinging a machete in the sugarcane field, that's my gym.
That was our ancestors' gym. They didn't have gyms in the context that we have gyms today.
But again, I grew up watching my parents and my grandparents who worked in the fields 6 days a week. So that was ingrained in my system of pushing the body to its extreme. You didn't stop cutting cane because you had a headache or you got a cramp or you're feeling exhausted. You had a job to do, so you pushed through to get it done.
And that is exactly what, on this journey of self-mastery, you have to do. And I say have to do, and I know this is trigger disclaimer. The wounded masculine gets really triggered in being told what you have to do. But what we are offering you is a guideline, the steps of the path that we have taken and that we've remembered. All ancient cultures have, quote unquote, abided by these, I like to call them the cosmic consciousness codes of conduct, the self-mastery rules. Like, what are the things that you, quote unquote, have to do in order to become embodied, in order to master this mind-body connection, in order to access and attain your higher consciousness.
But all ancient cultures teaches you that in order for you to access your higher self, you have to have self-mastery. So this is why yogis and monks, they just don't go sit in the forest and just disappear. They're actually doing something to their body and their mind every day to make it stronger and more disciplined every single day.
To shift into higher brain waves, to shift from their reptilian brain into the midbrain. And then there's the higher mind, the neocortex, the forebrain. And that is where, as I just wrote about it the other day, the cave of Brahma or the cave of Shiva and the pineal gland. This is our seat of consciousness. We are consciousness. However, the frequency that we are tuned to, the amount of DNA we have turned online and activated, basically dictates whether or not we live from a lower state of consciousness or our lower 3 chakras, or we live from our higher state of consciousness, our higher 4 chakras.
So let me ask you a quick question then.
Yes,
So for the average person who listens to us, how do they know if they're living in their lower 3 chakras or if they're living in their upper four chakras?
Well, it's a super simple question. Have you ever been guided into your lower three chakras and transmuted and literally felt survival fears, shame, guilt, anger, rage, frustration, overthinking, over worry, undigested thoughts, feelings, and emotions?
Insecurity.
Physically felt them being transmuted, because this journey from the head to the body, as the Buddha quoted, it's the longest journey for any human being to make. So a lot of, and I see this and I hear this all the time, because we have lived so disembodied, so much of our DNA has been dormant. Our ego, who's running the show, our ego, who has become the master of us, and that's what this self-mastery journey is, it's a reclamation of our higher self as the master. Our ego has been the master. So the ego oftentimes likes to say, oh yes, I'm living in my higher chakras, I'm in my body, I can feel. And it tells us this, and we never question, wait a second, is that my ego? Is that my trauma self? Or is that my higher self?
And again, disclaimer, when we say ego, it is often that the ego thinks that it's, oh, you're talking about somebody being narcissistic. No, when we refer to ego, we are simply referring to your trauma self. That is your ego. It is the kunda buffer that.
It's the lower state of consciousness you. That's exactly
that
what
is
it
the
is.
ego. And how do you know that the ego is online? Well, what is my response? If I'm talking to somebody or reacting to somebody, what is my response? Is my response one of fighting? And how do I fight? I'm going to argue with you. I'm going to try and explain so that you understand what I'm talking about. You're fighting. So you are in your trauma self. Fight. You're throwing a bomb and running. So I'm going to say something. I'm going to block and delete you and run away. And you're in flight. Or the person says something to you and you just don't know how to respond. So you just don't respond. I see the message. We see this all the time. We have friends and family members. We see the message. Will not respond. Will not respond.
And that freeze state is also a state of confusion, helplessness, powerlessness, hopelessness. So it's just deer in headlights, don't know what to do. So I'm just not going to do anything. I'm going to be paralyzed. So.
But before we move on from that spot, the other thing that I wanted to touch on real briefly, and again, disclaimer, just like Shelley is saying, when we are in that reptilian brain, which is what we're living in, all of us are living in this space every day. Even those of us who are doing plant medicine and thinking that we are traveling, journeying to our higher source of consciousness. Just bear with me for a second. If I'm living in my reptilian brain, breathing 15 to 19 times a minute, having 2,900 thoughts a minute, always in fight, flight, we're like a caged animal, always all over the place.
Breathing from the chest up.
Then even if I take a psychedelic, where am I journeying? Do I have a practice that takes me to my higher or my midbrain
or forebrain,
my frontal cortex? Do I have a practice outside of medicine that gets me into that? And if I don't have a practice that gets me into that, is the shaman or the medicine server taking me into there? No. Well, if those two things are not true, then how can the third thing be true, which is, oh yeah, I'm taking psychedelics and I am touching source, I am being guided to my higher self, but you don't know what the higher self is because you are always living in that reptilian brain.
Well, and I'll share this story. I was having a conversation with a man the other day who claimed...
Wait, you were having a conversation with a man?
Yeah. Who claimed that he just did a psilocybin ceremony, solo guided by himself. And, oh yeah, I met psilocybin exactly how you talk about, Shelley. And I'm like, really? Okay, so let me give you this example of what we mean by this, where people, the ego,
the trauma self
will reason and justify its behaviors because it can't see that it's, as I always say, you can't see when you're in a cesspool of shit. Someone else has to come along and be like, wait a second. So for example, this man was telling me that in his psilocybin ceremony, he realized that he can't trust other people. So he needs to work on being able to trust other people. And it's American women's fault why he can't keep a relationship. And he wants to have a daughter. That's more important than making money. And I had questioned him, okay, so psilocybin is a sacred medicine. And these sacred medicines, their sole purpose is to guide us within, to go internal. So if the sacred medicine shares these insights or ahas with you that keep your awareness focused on the external, focused on blaming others that, well, I can't trust others. They're going to rob me. They're going to do something to me. So I need to work on trusting others. That is still keeping your awareness external. That is not guiding you internal to realize, I need to heal my lack of trust in me and what I'm creating as my reality. No one can rob me or hurt me or do anything to me that would cause me to not trust them unless I've given them my power to, unless I have a fear frequency stored in my body that is going to then create that reality showing up. The second piece is, instead of blaming other women, categorizing women as the reason for why all the relationships fail or for whatever reason, that is still keeping the awareness external, blaming it on past partners instead of looking in the mirror, which, if these sacred medicines were guiding people to midbrain or forebrain, to their higher consciousness, would they not have the awareness to come internal and go, wait, this is all me. It's not the woman's fault. I need to look in the mirror. The reason I run from relationships is me. The reason I'm creating people robbing me and creating experiences where I can't trust others, it's me.
Well, we are creators. So we go right back to that concept of, we understand that we create our reality. It's not created for us. We create our reality.
Well, the ownership of that concept is a hard one, because
when it's good, it's not, though.
I know, right? Well, I want to take ownership of that because I created that.
Look at what I
shit over
created.
there, I don't want to take ownership of that shit. That's not me. Let me just blame somebody else.
Which is funny because we see this all the time. If something good is happening for you,
that's all me.
That you create your reality, you're like, look how amazing I am. I created this. But the stuff that's not so good for us, we're like, oh, that's happening to me. I didn't create that. Somebody else is doing that to me. Somebody is breaking my heart. Somebody is robbing me. Somebody's doing. We create all of our reality.
Exactly. So coming back to, and this ties into our live from 2 weeks ago, when we journey with plant medicine, where do you journey from? Mind, body, or ego? So if you're journeying with plant medicine from the ego, from your reptilian brain state,
from your trauma self,
you are still going to stay in this space of having your awareness external, not having your awareness internal, not looking in the mirror and healing yourself. So how can we say that these plant medicines connect us to our higher consciousness when our higher consciousness would have us look in the mirror at ourselves?
Absolutely. But that's all the plants do for you. If you've never done psychedelics, or if you have done psychedelics, we will tell you, based on our experience, all these plant medicines do, all these psychedelics do is reveal you to you.
So if you are meeting psychedelics or plant medicines from your trauma self state, and you're not being guided in how to access your higher consciousness with these sacred plant medicines, we'll always ask, did you really meet your higher consciousness, or did that ego or trauma self trick you into thinking, oh yeah, that was an amazing, beautiful ceremony. Look what I healed. Did you really heal it? Because in order to heal it,
gotta feel it.
You gotta feel it.
So if you're not feeling it in the body, you're not really healing it in the body.
Exactly.
And where's the trauma stored?
In the body.
So it's not rocket science, folks. It's just very, very simple.
It's a very logical. If, going back to my background as a chiropractor, I learned that the nervous system was the fastest form of communication in the body. On this journey, in a cannabis ceremony, my body's like, nervous system's not the fastest form of communication in the body. They didn't teach you about your fascial system. The fascia is the fastest form of communication in the body. Information travels at the speed of light.
It's your information highway.
Literally, information highway. pathway of consciousness is stored in the body.
Hence the light body.
Light body. We are nothing more than energy and light. We
Quantum-
are frequency.
Quantum physics proves that today. So don't take our word for it. It's not hairy, fairy, woo-woo. Quantum physics proves it today. When we through an isotopic measuring device, when we take a single strand of human cell and start breaking it down to a molecular structure, you realize that 99% of that molecular structure is nothing. It's just energy. It's a frequency. As a matter of fact, they have even measured that frequency. Every cell in your body measures at 0.5 volts.
That's a whole nother live. I have stats in my book for that one that will also blow a lot of your minds. So when we look at coming back to fascia and the nervous system, 80% of the messages that flow between the body and the brain originate where, my love?
I don't know.
You don't know? They originate in the body. 80% of the messages flowing in our nervous system originate in the body. But the nervous system itself is not what is traumatized that is sending those messages of fight, flight, freeze. The nervous system is just picking up the messages of fight, flight, freeze from somewhere.
And carrying it.
And carrying the message to somewhere else.
It's just the transportation, no different than our brain. There are no receptors in our brain for pain, but yet we feel pain in the body. So where are we feeling, what's receiving this
Where's
pain?
the pain? Well, the pain is in the body. So when the pain is stored, and pain is nothing more than stuck energy, stuck molecules, energy that's not moving, unhealed traumas. So when those stuck energies are stored in the fascia, which the fascia covers your body from head to toe, covers every cell, tissue, and organ, is all interconnected. When you experience a trauma, let's say in your right shoulder, that tension pattern pulls through your entire body. Just like there is a recipe book, an instruction set for every part of your body and every cell, not all of them are turned online. Your entire fascia feels that trauma that you felt at the location of your right shoulder, but you can feel it throughout your entire body. This is where compensation patterns come in, because if you punch me and I lean over this way, now my body has to compensate to come back so my eyes are level with the ground. But now I have one shoulder higher than the other, one hip higher than the other. If you come on this side and you punch me on this side, now I'm going to come over here and my body has to recompensate again to try to maintain equilibrium. But I'm not healing anything. My body's just trying to compensate just to maintain equilibrium, but it's not in a state of equilibrium. So 80% of the messages come from the body. So if we don't drop into the body to heal, these 80% of these messages flowing from the body to the brain, letting the brain know trauma, fear, danger, then those messages are going to keep flowing from the body to the brain. And the brain is going to keep sending messages back to the body to try to create balance. But unfortunately, until that message, the root of that message, wherever it is stored in your fascia, that is relaying to your nervous system, hey, help, danger, until that is gone or healed, integrated, processed, whatever you want to call it, those fight, flight, freeze messages are going to continue flowing through your nervous system. You're going to stay stuck in your reptilian brain, and DNA is going to remain dormant, asleep, feeling presence diminished, using less than 10% of our brain, less than 5% of all of our other sensory capacities.
So since we've given all the stats about the DNA and the so-called junk DNA, you did start off talking about our superhuman
abilities.
So how do we activate these other 98%?
Lovely that you shall ask, because I was saving that for last. So in order for dormant DNA to wake up, molecules need to break apart and free themselves from their coagulated state. Sounds just like stuck energies from unhealed traumas stored in the fascia, huh? And this is facilitated through two mechanisms, an external mechanism and an internal mechanism. So vibrational frequency is the language of your multidimensional recipe book called your DNA. Everything is frequency. The DNA that you currently have access to are the recipes whose vibrational frequencies are in alignment with your current vibrational frequency. What sets the tone for our current vibrational frequency? Well, that's our current state of being. That is our current nervous system state. If we are in a state of fight, flight, freeze from our reptilian brain, then we only have access to the DNA that is allotted for the state that we are living in. So we have to literally shift our nervous system state. We have to move our body back into a state of balance. We have to raise our frequency in order to turn on and activate these dormant strands of DNA. So there is an external mechanism, which is solar flares. Solar flares are flowing into Earth and causing these stuck molecules to literally implode or explode and break apart. And what we're seeing with that, and a great analogy here is, 2 years ago when we had our ascension symptoms, we were so sick. We didn't feel good. I remember you wanted to call it a virus, and I'm like, well, it's a virus, but it's not necessarily what we would consider a label. And this is where I'm always reminding people, do not get attached to labels, be it COVID, be it dengue, be it
Whatever.
Ebola, be it the seasonal flu. Like, do not get attached to labels.
Just the body just working out whatever's stuck in it.
Exactly.
Any doctor will tell you that.
The external mechanisms, solar flares, implode these frequencies. It is a purge. So lower frequencies that were once stuck that are now imploded and exploding are going to explode in pain or symptoms. So for example, if solar flares burn away the gut biofilm that has been keeping viruses, fungi, parasites, worms hiding and dormant, which mirrors our dormant DNA, when this external mechanism called solar flares lights up our body, energy, high frequency, flows through our body, it is going to implode all those lower frequencies. It's going to burn away that biofilm, exposing all of those dormant viruses hiding out underneath, which is why I started off saying DNA activations are not sunshine and rainbows and unicorns and all love and light. Sometimes
Most
a
times.
DNA
Most
activation,
times.
it's going to be a purge. We had that one stint that was 2 weeks long, literally felt energies, high frequency energies flowing into my spine.
Sick to the stomach.
2 hours later, we went to the hot springs. I was like, okay, I can't sit at my computer. I was actually writing somatophobia at the time. Okay, babe, can't sit at the computer anymore. We got to go to the hot springs. Went to the hot springs and I was going downhill fast. Like, whoa, what am I feeling? Okay, get me home. I was shaking. I had a fever. I could barely do my practice that evening, but it's what got me through it. Suffered, literally struggled. I did not even do womb kriyas the next day. I canceled it because I'm like, I absolutely can't. And then Sunday, you felt it incoming. Just as I started rising out of it, feeling a little bit better, you felt the same energies flowing into your spine. And then boom, exact same symptoms as me. And this is where, without knowing this time that we're going through with the solar flares and what may be going on with your body, this is why I always reiterate, don't label it, don't judge it, don't call it this or that, because then you identify with it. It becomes yours. Instead of hearing your body going, this is some old shit that we got to heal. This is a dormant virus from one of your ancestors that they didn't heal, that got passed down to you in your DNA.
So in less than 4 minutes, can you tell us how to activate the DNA?
Well, the internal mechanism for activating DNA and activating our superhuman powers is moving out of our reptilian brain state into our forebrain state, or as I like to call it, activating our divine mind. And to do that, we have to unite the mind and the body. They have been separate for far too long. And as long as they're separated and we live from our ego trauma self, never dropping below our head, our DNA is never going to come online, even with these external mechanisms such as solar flares. We can be dependent on technological devices, different light frequencies to activate our DNA. But the question I always ask is, if you're not healing the trauma in your body,
and you're just putting a band-aid on it.
How long will that technological light frequency device activate your DNA for before that trauma that has not been addressed in your fascia will begin to physically remanifest as pain or symptoms? So the internal mechanism of activating DNA is uniting the mind and body, and that is this self-healing, inside-out, powerful methodology that we have given birth to of bringing the mind into the body. And on Sunday, we're guiding everyone those who join us, in a somatic cannabis trauma healing ceremony. And I'll be guiding you through the 7 Shakti activators, which is the 7 different ways you activate your life force. So real quick, as a chiropractor, I adjusted people's spines to remove the interference in their nervous system so that their life force energy could flow, because their life force energy is the power that made their body. It's also the power that heals their body. But along this journey, and in us developing the self-healing methodology of awakening our life force, this is the difference between solar flares, the external mechanism activating our DNA. It's like getting a chiropractic adjustment. You're going to get a small taste of your life force being able to flow between your body and brain. You're going to get a little bit of relief. You're going to feel like you're waking up and coming online. And then there's the fast track, and that is dropping into your body, awakening your own life force, and then using it to transmute these stuck energies. So the internal mechanism for activating DNA, we got to feel it to heal it. We got to bring our mind into our body. We have to heal all of those unhealed lower frequencies to rise our Shakti, our life force energy, to our crown chakra, so we can multiply all of that healing by what? 1,000.
And that's all we keep reminding you guys every week with these solar flares that's coming in. They're excellent opportunities to hyperspeed your healing. So if you don't have a healing modality, we will encourage you to find a healing modality that challenges you, not just going through the motions and you can do it in your sleep.
Exactly.
You do a
challenge
healing,
is the key word.
And use these solar flares. Pay attention to when they're coming in. Know that all frequencies, good and bad, right or wrong, whatever duality you want to subscribe to, that they're going to be magnified. If your core frequency is not enoughness, insecurity, jealousy, poverty consciousness, sexual programming, whatever it
Which we
is,
all have them all. They're all interconnected.
Those are going to be magnified.
They're all going to be magnified.
If you're vibrating from a place of joy, and we're not talking about fake joy and fake happiness. I'm smiling, so therefore
it's a frequency. And I always like to be devil's advocate. How can you be the frequency of joy when you have the frequency of shame and guilt and fear and all those other lower frequencies literally clouding you, preventing you from feeling that higher frequency? So the key to activating DNA, we got to raise our frequency. It's that simple. We have to raise our frequency. And yes, it is a have to. Because in order to activate our DNA on our own, we have to raise our frequency.
Again, all ascended masters have done it.
Well, the question I asked the other day, coming back to the plant medicine, why did ascended masters have to commit to a daily self-healing practice? And why did they have to commit to doing the work for 7 years to purify their body's life force channels for their Kundalini to awaken?
Didn't they have medicine?
How come they just couldn't go to, 25 or 50 or 100 ayahuasca ceremonies and magically they can ascend?
Last time I checked, they had access to all of these medicines. They had lotus, they had blue Nile, they have all these DMT type medicine. So why weren't they just taking it? Why did they spend so many years doing self-mastery?
And the key is they merge these sacred medicines with a somatic practice. That is the magic combination to accessing your higher consciousness at hyper speed. So,
Thank
with
you,
that being
folks.
said,
As always, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for joining us, taking your Thursday to spend with us for an hour.
and if you desire to join us in our next book reading ceremony, theme is the mother wound. Our previous one was powerful. Every single person felt the pain of their mother wound in their body, and they transmuted a portion of it. The next one is Friday, January 31st at our normal time, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern. And then this Sunday, if you have not met the higher self of cannabis, we are offering a sacred cannabis rite of passage. It's a 2-hour somatic cannabis trauma healing ceremony where you will remember this powerful inside out self-healing methodology that allows you to marry your body and your mind.
And even
to
though we're doing it
activate-
on Zoom, you'll still get the effect.
It's from 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern. All the links will be shared below or on my Telegram channel. And if you have any questions, as always, don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all. We will see you next week. Have a beautiful day.